Hi, you. It's me, Nicole Phoenix Star, and this is the Nick Star podcast. So, I have been having such a glorious week, and I am so appreciative of all the messages and the experience I've had landing in Australia and the response to my podcast last week, letting everyone know that I moved from Bali and have landed on the Sunshine Coast. And yeah, it's been hectic, as I'm sure you can imagine. Um, yeah, just so many landing pieces clicking into place. And today, actually, Leo went to an orientation at his new school. And when I went to pick him up after his couple of hours there, he said to me, "Oh, can I stay?" And I said, "No, we can't do that." But it was a really wonderful experience to have that he feels so happy already at school just after being there a couple of hours and really enjoyed meeting his new teacher and other classmates that he'll be joining next year when he starts at the end of January at his new school. So that was really beautiful. I've been loving riding around on my new bike. So as I mentioned, there's a few key things that I really wanted as my ideal when I started feeling into the idea of moving here. And the first one on the list being to have a bike. And so I started looking for the same sort of make and model, which is a Honda PCX 155cc scooter. And I found one, as I said, and yeah, just riding around everywhere is like such a joy. And, having a bike is such a huge part of my life. It makes me feel free. It makes me feel joy. It brings so much joy. And I just love the whole experience of riding a bike as my form of transport. I don't have a car at all. When it was raining a lot last week and we actually had to go to school to do the admission process and a school tour, Ruby's like, "You need to come and get my car." And it was a really good thing because the rain was extreme. But yeah, it's, just I guess maybe one day I'll get a car, but I don't feel like I will anytime soon. I live really close to the shops and there is a school bus fairly close by for the future, so I don't have that great need to have a car as well at this time. So we shall see. And I really wanted a swimming pool because I loved having a swimming pool in Bali and I love swimming pool life. And our house has a very large plunge pool. It's not quite a swimming pool, it's probably a half swimming pool. Not really a plunge pool. It's kind of like a super large plunge pool, half swimming pool situation. So, yeah. And the other really important factor was for Leo to be able to go to a school similar to what he was going to in Bali. And last night I was sitting at my kitchen table filling out all the paperwork that I had to drop off today. And it was one of those surreal moments where when I first applied to the school, really not knowing, I applied when they were on school holidays back in October, and I didn't hear back for a while. And not knowing if there was any space or anything, it was a kind of huge moving part in the whole process. But sitting there last night filling out those forms, I'd had glimpses of that, of being in a new house, filling out forms, preparing for the final lock-in. And I just took a moment to experience it, like to really experience that vision I'd had and all the energy that it moved through me, and to just take a moment to allow the human experience to be felt fully, to be truly present in filling out those forms of a completion point. And I'm just so grateful that he's able to go to this school that is in alignment with what was important to me in moving here, and not having to kind of compromise on things that were important to me, for me and for him. So, yeah, and it kind of gave me a whole, perspective about life being a ceremony, even in the mundanity of filling out forms for a school admission. Because I'd written down the notes for this podcast a few days ago about, really recognizing that life is a ceremony and life is an offering. And that's such a huge mantra for me, irrespective if I live in a highly spiritual land or a suburban space. My life is always a ceremony. My life is always an offering. And as we were leaving Bali, making incremental steps of that, truly being able to have a full experience and being really present and offer our gratitude and doing all of those steps as a ceremonial offering. And I was very fortunate to take one of my students to for Holy Beach and do a beach portal, which, originally was for her. But when I did my portal, it was indescribable. It was extraordinary. I remember the first time in 2011 when I stepped onto that holy beach, and what feels like thousands of times since, it's probably more like hundreds, but it could be 1,000. And all the different portals and all the different people and all the solo journeys and all the different iterations of doing portals on those beaches. And it was just incredible. I truly don't have the words to encapsulate how incredibly touching it all was, and profound and special, and how much it really just meant to me. And a few days later was Leo's last day at school in Bali, and how they took the time to do his gratitude circle, and he took time to thank everyone, and it was such a moment to take the time to really acknowledge, he first ever went to, big school, not just different little preschools around the world. Had that school and had only not been there for the 18 months we were in Australia during COVID, and the rest of the time he's always been at that school, and to really allow the full experience of that to move through him, and for me to be able to witness that and be with him on his last day at school, present as we prepared to go and do our gratitude ceremony at the temple straight from school. So he got dressed at school, I was already dressed. And as we said goodbye, and they created a tunnel of kids, and he walked through in his ceremony clothes, it was just living life as a ceremony, our offering to this human experience. So then we went to the temple, and I'd brought with me Leo's soul medicine, which was made from his placenta. So I still had the pieces of his placenta that were in the tinctures that had been taken when he was born, that had been prayed on every day for a moon cycle, and had been topped up consistently. And, whenever he needed a little support, or he was teething or whatever, I'd put that on his feet or on his fontanelle when he was a baby. It was the only kind of medicine he ever had until he got typhoid at 2. He never had anything else. And the pieces of placenta we had buried when we left to go to Australia for COVID, and still had just the liquid tincture left. And we took those to the temple, and we offered the tincture to the river. Leo being born in Bali, and some of his placenta being buried at his birth, and then his soul medicine placenta pieces being buried before we went to Australia. Like, he's just, part of the land, anchored in, and to offer the end of his soul medicine into the sacred river at the Holy Temple allows him to just flow onwards. We'd taken our offerings and looked behind him up the river, and took a moment of gratitude for all that has been behind him. He put his gratitude into his offering, and then sent his offering and his soul medicine down the river to flow and find its way wherever it needs to go, as a physical and metaphorical aspect of our new chapter. We went then up to the top of the temple and received our blessings on our way, and I did an offering. And we then had water blessings from the fountains up there, and left. And it was a really, really, really beautiful experience. And then we jumped on the bike and went to the farewell party where all his friends were waiting for him at the family day club. It's like a big restaurant, 2 pools, and it's just a place where the kids have gone a lot on Friday afternoons to hang out and play and eat, and the main road in was actually closed, and we had to take the back way through this rice field that had broken track. It was insane. It was the most extreme barley ride possibly ever, where I ended up in the rice field with the bike in it for a minute. And these guys came and picked it up and then rode into the party. It was hilarious. It was just like, you don't have a barley experience if you don't put a bike in a rice field. It was so funny. Leo jumped off the bike a minute before then because the track literally got to about 20 centimeters wide, and then all the pavers were falling into the rice field. And yeah, I was trying to navigate this like hairline piece of the track, and I kind of went too slow and the bike laid down and in I went. Textbook hilarious. Jumped back on the bike and off we went. Yeah, so we had a beautiful time at a place called Kalapamuda. Kalapamuda means young coconut. So yeah, and that was the Friday, and then on the Saturday, our last day, as we were packing up everything, and we still had offerings left over from our temple visit intentionally, and we lit our incense and went over to our house temple, the little temple that's on our property in our Bali house. And Leo and I did our offerings of gratitude and thanks to the house, and put our offerings on the temple before we left. And just as a normal part of packing up the house, and it's what we've always done at houses in Bali, where we have either moved or left or whatever. It's just what we do, to give thanks to the house, to give thanks to the land, to give thanks to the space. And yeah, I don't know, it just feels normal. I don't know, it's like thanking your host if you stay somewhere. And I don't know, like we always touch the side of the plane before we walk in, and then put our hands on our hearts to connect with the energy of the plane, and grateful that it's taking us wherever we're going. And I don't know, you kind of take it for granted that this is just a normal way of being. And I don't know, it's just being aware of the journey you're on, and recognizing that all of these parts come together, and to not take advantage of the fact that, you're going somewhere else, and someone's so many pieces and so many people and have come together to be able to prepare your journey for you and to take you, and to acknowledge that. I don't know, it just allows a wholeness to be experienced, I guess. And arriving into Australia again, as you step over that threshold of through immigration, taking a moment to stand and step in to the new energy and the new land. And it's interesting watching now, like Australia always acknowledges the Indigenous people of each area, and it's become quite a normalized thing. And it's kind of, just a general version of that, just taking a moment to acknowledge the energy of where you're going to roam, and that to be all encompassing, including, the originals as well as the currents and the imprint we leave, the footprints we leave. And always gratitude to be able to be in that space, and gratitude for simply being there. And the hilarity of arriving to clogged pipes, plumbing pipes in my house, and how essentially all the toilets and sinks decided to overflow, and we had quite the plumbing emergency. And when all the workmen came and essentially gave the house a very efficient colonic, full house enema action, cleared out all the old energy, and now everything is clear and moving beautifully fresh. And how things don't always seem so pretty and sweet, yet they do what they do. And just, like I said, so amusing. The clearing of the energy was a little different. And then eventually hopping on my bike for the first time and connecting, just like someone would with a horse. It's an aspect of consciousness. And although it might not have a heartbeat, it certainly has an essence and an energy. And the previous man who rode it, it's still there. And to kind of claim that moment. And also, arriving at school, all of these things, just taking a moment to recognize that you're in that space, and to be grateful to be in that space, and to bring, what energy are you bringing to the space? What is your offering to the space? And this is how I live life as a ceremony, and it's automatic. It's not something I sit there and another thing I have to do. And ultimately, that is my offering to the conscious collective, with that intentional way I walk through life, and seeing it as a part of Leo's operating system. It's just the way that we do things, and it's very normal to him. So just because I don't live in the island of the gods anymore doesn't mean I act any differently in living life as a ceremony, being very aware and conscious of my offering. So that's kind of the sharing I have of my podcast this week. I will be setting up all of my office in my office space this coming week. So I am looking forward to that. Because I'm currently lying on my bed in my bedroom. I'm a professional podcast studio where I sleep. But yeah, setting up, I now have the desks. I just have to get a new office chair, and everything that's in my cupboard can be set up and put out and into it all. Yes. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I am so grateful. My website's www.nickstar.com. Thank you so much. I love you. Mwah.